it's been a great start to the season. There's no doubt. And there's been so much interest in the sport. And yet that interest hasn't been circling around the normal powers. All right. There hasn't been a lot of talk about Georgia, even though they've won the last 2 national championships. There hasn't been a lot of talk about Ohio State. And they're normally a team and a program that kind of sucks the oxygen out of the room in college football. They are a massive, massive brand in this sport. Well, we're about to start talking about Ohio State. And that's because they're finally putting a flag in the ground as it relates to their quarterback situation. And they have named Kyle McCord the starting quarterback now moving forward, and he will not split reps with Devin Brown. So Ryan Day is going with Kyle McCord, and there's some significance to this. There's a lot of significance to this, but I will tell you, just from an individual quarterback's perspective, this is such a good thing. You don't want this type of competition to drag out. Number one, these guys did not serve 2 different roles or purposes within the offense. Okay, so this was a true competition. One of them needed to win so that they could have the confidence to know that they were the number 1 quarterback and that they would get all the reps. I've told you before, quarterback is a reps position. And there's only one way to get them, and that is the live reps during the game. So if you look at the drives so far this season, you'll see that Kyle McCord has had 14 drives this season, and Devin Brown has had 6. Well, now those 6 opportunities that Devin Brown had were not 6 opportunities that Kyle McCord had. You can never get those reps back. Okay, so that's why it's important to have a starting quarterback that is a lone starting quarterback, in particular when he's in a developmental mode like McCord is as a first-year starter for Ohio State. Now, he played a little bit better against Youngstown, there's no doubt. There are still some areas of concern for this team. Let me go through them. First and foremost, as you know, this fan base, you Buckeyes, I know you, I've been around you, I hear you. You have outsized expectations every single year. It's really 2 things. Beat Michigan, win the national championship. If you don't do those 2 things, the season is considered somewhat of a failure. And so the last 2 years, I mean, you obviously hear the grumblings. Now you come into this season, and this team so far against Indiana and Youngstown has not quite measured up to the expectations that the fan base has had. Let's just face it. And so you hear all these people like, oh, this isn't going to be good enough. And I feel like they forget very quickly, you Buckeye fans, you have forgotten the style in which your national championship team in 2002 played. That was a team that won a bit ugly, but they won. And I know it hasn't been pretty yet for Ohio State, but they've won, albeit against Indiana and Youngstown. Not great competition. That's coming. That's coming. So what are the areas now with the starting quarterback and Kyle McCord, what areas does Ohio State have to improve in? Well, let me get into those. I've watched all the film of Ohio State. The run game has to improve. I personally think that they need to run between the tackles more often and not so much on the edge. When they're trying to run that wide stretch play, I just don't feel like that suits their personnel up front. They get a lot of unblocked second level players because their linemen don't, when they're blocking the stretch run, they don't do a good job of getting to the second level from the double team and pushing that double team up to the linebacker. Okay, so you get a lot of free second level players, and that's what really hurts them, in particular on short yardage. Now, when they run in between the tackles, those big offensive linemen can come off the ball and move more forward and not so much sideways. When they're moving forward, generally speaking, they do a better job, although not perfect, but a better job of getting up to the linebackers. I also think that they need to incorporate some man and gap schemes into their run repertoire because I think it fits their personnel better. Now, Having said that, they have elite talent in the backfield. Travion Henderson made some runs against Youngstown that makes us remember that he was such a highly rated recruit. It makes us remember that this guy has the talent to be in the Heisman conversation and was before the season. All right, there are times when even unblocked players are sitting there, right there, ready to tackle Travion Henderson, and he can make a miss, right? They've got elite talent, and Henderson is certainly one of those guys with elite talent. But the run game in general has got to improve, in particular in short yardage. They've got to do a better job of picking up first downs on 3rd and short, less than 3 yards. You've got to be able to run for a first down, in particular against Youngstown. Now, what else has to improve? That's number one. Number two, the quarterback play in general. While Kyle McCord, quote unquote, won the job, it was a problem that they were in this position to begin with. I believe that it was because neither of them played well enough to be the bona fide starter from camp on. I told you in the preseason that if you're an Ohio State fan, what you want is that both of these guys are playing lights out and making it tough on the coaches to decide. What you didn't want is both of these guys to be inconsistent and making it tough on these coaches to settle on someone because of mistakes. And now after watching two games, it's more of the latter. McCord does some things really well, and clearly he's a talented player. He wouldn't be at Ohio State if he wasn't a talented player. But he also does some things really poorly, and he misses some things out there. Some very easy throws. He'll lock on, in particular on 3rd down, he'll lock on a receiver or a particular route and won't come off of it, even though there are other routes that are wide open. There was a route against Youngstown where they're running just kind of a curl flat combination to the wide side of the field. It's a 3-man route because basically the inside receiver, the 3rd receiver, he's running what's considered a wall off kind of curl, and he can hook up basically over the ball. And what he's doing is, why it's called a wall off, is he's trying to prevent the middle linebacker from running underneath the curl area. And then you occupy the curl flat defender with the flat route, and then you run a curl behind it. So the wall off route is going up, and it's a one-on-one with the linebacker, and he hooks up over the ball. Well, McCord stares him down and throws the wall off hook. And the curl route was wide open. Okay, so that's an example. Now, he also does some things very well. The first touchdown pass to Marvin Harrison, that was a great throw. He threw another little corner route, beautiful throw along the sidelines. So the talent is there, and the more reps that he gets, you can anticipate that he's going to get better and better and more consistent and more consistent. That's obviously what you want if you're a Buckeyes fan. And the reps are an important part of this. They're going into a stretch now where they've got a game that you would absolutely think that they would win this week, and then they get ready for Notre Dame, which looks like a much tougher opponent, in particular because they've got a quarterback in Sam Hartman that has really solidified their offense. Well, Ohio State needs that as well. What does that quarterback need? He needs reps. That's what development is all about. So now he's going to get those. The offense on 3rd downs has not been good enough, whether it's running for the short yardage first down or being able to throw the ball. They're converting about 23.5% of their 3rd downs with McCord at quarterback. That has to increase. If you look at the numbers of what their offense is this year versus what they were a year ago, it's pretty drastic, and it needs to improve dramatically and quickly. Scoring, last year, 2nd in the country. This year, 71st in the country. Yards per passing attempt, last year, 3rd in the country with C.J. Stroud and company. This year, 42nd in the country. Rushing average, last year, 12th in America. This year, 63rd in America. And this is the big one, 3rd down percentage. Last year, they were 28th in the country. This year, 119th. Those have to improve. And you would think that they would start to improve when your quarterback can develop through the reps that he's going to get now as the starting quarterback. And for their sake, let's hope that they do get those reps. The last thing that they need to improve, and this is a defensive side of things, they had a hard time getting off the field, even against Youngstown. And part of that is that they don't play in the backfield enough against the opponent. I'm giving you all the things that they need to work on. Why? Because we know all the things that they're very strong at. They're so talented, and they are an elite team. a team that plays the way that they played the first couple of weeks should be in tight ball games regardless of the opponent, but they have just out-rostered their opponents so far. Eventually, that won't be a winning formula because they will face a Notre Dame. They will face a Penn State. They will face a Michigan where they can't just out-roster or out-athlete the competition. And they will need to do the little things well. Well, one of those little things is playing in the backfield of the opponent. They need to get more production in terms of tackle for loss, pressure on the quarterback, and sacks. Those things have to increase. And in particular with the defensive line that they felt like was really going to be a strength, and I still think can be a strength. Those are the areas that I look at right now with this team that have to develop, and they have to develop quickly. They've got to go on the road in a couple of weeks to South Bend, Indiana, and that Notre Dame team looks awfully good. Awfully good. Now, they've played a low level of competition, but let's face it, so is Ohio State. I want to go back to what I initially said, the outsized expectations of the fan base. And I know that I just fed the fan base a little bit of fuel there with the things that they need to work on. But remember, this team is an elite team. Ryan Day has never had a quarterback that hasn't had a very successful season. The track record suggests that the offense will eventually be just fine. It just so happens that that progress is going to start taking place more rapidly now with McCord getting those reps as the bona fide starter. It's going to be a big one, though. Couple of weeks. I mean, an absolutely big one. By the way, just get the ball to Marvin Harrison more. And they were doing that, and they did a great job of that against Youngstown. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.